When does a man become a monster? That is a fabulous question. The short answer is, it's in the first saga. For the long answer, we need to talk about Epic the Musical. This video is just about Epic the Musical, not the original source material, so keep that in mind. Also, in no way do I want to contradict any of the storytelling elements from Jorge. I am just a super fan of Epic the Musical, so I wanted to get into it from like a story analyst perspective. Let's talk about the moment that Odysseus goes from man to monster. So like I said, it's in the very first saga. In fact, it's only in the second song that he actually goes from man to monster. Now, it's because in the song Just a Man, Odysseus makes pretty much the most monstrous choice that he can. Yes, he is taking an innocent life to save his family, but this is the moment when he actually crosses the threshold. In fact, if you think about it, every other action that Odysseus takes in the Odyssey following the events of Troy honestly pale in comparison to that first life he takes of that innocent child. Yes, again, it's to save his family, but there's not really any justification here, whereas every other action is almost like the reaction or the consequence of someone else's error or mistake. And obviously Odysseus's hubris comes up several times, but as far as like strategy and the other sacrifices or other people that he hurts in the story, the infant is the one that you cannot really explain your way around, and that is why like in this moment he becomes the monster. From this point on, the story is still compelling because what's actually happening for the rest of Act 1 from a story analyst perspective is Odysseus trying to reclaim his humanity. So I had a fun idea. I want to go saga by saga and kind of illustrate to you guys sort of what is going on narratively from a man versus monster standpoint. So I have this little scoreboard here. So anytime a story beat happens that kind of reaffirms the idea of mercy or humanity or compassion, we're going to put a little tally over in man. And then anytime something happens that reaffirms the theme of ruthlessness, or being a monster, anything like that, or power or cunning, is going to be a monster point over here. These story beats will also not just be centered specifically around Odysseus. It can be any moment in the story that reaffirms these themes to us as listeners. So starting from the top, the Troy saga, Song 2, Just a Man, Odysseus kills an infant. This is when he becomes the monster narratively. This is his inciting incident. He makes a choice. He's essentially starting his tragedy now by making a choice that he cannot really walk back from unless he has like a great boon given to him or a protective shield. And in the song Full Speed Ahead, when he gets to basically listen to either Eurylochus or Polites, he listens to Polites and decides to go on the island without doing like a raid. So he chooses to listen to the voice of reason. So that's a humanity point. Then, of course, we have Open Arms, which is a great story beat. Polites is reminding Odysseus of his humanity. He's telling him that even though he feels guilt, there is a way back from monster to come back to like his compassionate self. So the next point we get actually is in the Cyclops saga in the song Polyphemus. It's when the Cyclops breaks the deal that he makes with Odysseus, which is the wine in exchange for them leaving with their lives. The Cyclops breaks the deal. And that is definitely a monster point. We're faced with an actual monster and we see that they don't keep their promises. Third monster point, at the end of the song Survive, Polites dies. And that means that Odysseus is like voice of reason, an actual person that was encouraging him to be merciful. That gets taken away from this. Our next one would be a humanity point. It's in the song Remember Them at like the very end. It's when Odysseus defies Athena. She tells him to kill the Cyclops, and he says, no, I will spare him. And that is ultimately a humanity point. He could have taken the Cyclops' life. Instead, he falls prone to his pride, his hubris, and that definitely leads to more tragedy. But ultimately, he could have killed the Cyclops, and he didn't. So humanity point. Then next is a monster point. This is in My Goodbye. This is when Athena decides that she is abandoning Odysseus. This is when we also see the selfishness of the gods as well illustrated in this song, is that she only cares sort of about saving face and being the most cunning, and she ditches Odysseus. Our next one, moving on to the Ocean Saga, is going to be a humanity point. This is in the song Luck Runs Out. This is when Odysseus is telling Eurylochus that he still believes in goodness. Next up, we have Keep Your Friends Close. This is a monster point, the selfishness of the crew. I would say that selfishness I'm kind of attributing to sort of ruthlessness or our more monstrous sides. So when the men or the crew open the bag, release the storm, that's definitely a monster point. Also had that moment foreshadowed to us by the god of wind Aeolus when she sings Keep Your Friends Close and Your Enemies Closer. She's basically warning him ahead of time that something bad is going to happen. And then of course the big song Ruthlessness, huge monster point here when Poseidon rolls up and kills a whole bunch of Odysseus's men, for sure. So as you can see, we're definitely leaning more towards the monster motif. Moving on into the Circe saga, the next one we have is also a monster point. We're up to 7 now. This is in the song Puppeteer. This is when Circe turns the men into pigs. But the other point that we also have a humanity point, because when Eurylochus comes back, Odysseus still chooses to save his men. He does not abandon them there. So that's humanity. Then what's cool is in the next song that we actually put down points is There Are Other Ways. This is the Persuasion song. We get 2 humanity points here. The first is when Odysseus rejects Circe's advances. Even though it could save him and his men, he chooses his heart, his love, Penelope, that overshadows it, and he rejects Circe's advances. And then the second thing is he also begs for their help, and Circe does help. She's moved by his loyalty and compassion, and that in turn moves her to also be compassionate. And of course we go into the Underworld saga, and this is a heavy one. So of course we're going to have a monster point in literally the song Underworld when all of the men, the sailors' voices, he hears them. They actually ask him, why did you spare the Cyclops when it could have spared us? That's a story beat that reaffirms monster for sure. And then of course, No Longer You. The prophet also tells Odysseus, hey, a man as he is or as you are is not going to make it home. By the end of Act 1, we have the song Monster. So this is really interesting. So as you can see, obviously the monster points are outweighing the humanity points. By the time Odysseus gets here, he has been fighting the whole time to try and maintain the man that he thought that he was, the man before he left for Troy, the man who loves Penelope and is trying to get home to her. But by the end of Act 1, there's more data showing that it is more useful to be a monster. And so he embraces that in the song Monster. So by the time we roll into Act 2, he has fully embraced it. He is no longer trying to preserve this. All right, spoiler, the Thunder Saga is all monster points. So first off, we have Different Beast. Here we go. They kill the sirens. They make siren sashimi. Then a next big one is the sacrifice to Scylla. Huge monster point right there. And then in Mutiny, we have a story beat where Eurylochus prioritizes himself. You could argue that he's prioritizing the crew, but Eurylochus is kind of the embodiment of selfishness in the story. A lot of things can be linked back to his selfish choices and desires. So when they commit mutiny and they are disloyal to him, huge monster point. And then of course we have Thunderbringer, Zeus rolls up and Odysseus chooses himself. He does not try to save his men. The man that maybe tried to save them in the Circe saga, he doesn't exist anymore. What I really love about the Wisdom saga is up to this point we've been following Odysseus' story, and we get to have a bit of a narrative break and look at the story from a new POV, which would be Telemachus, and that is really fun and interesting. So in the song Legendary, towards the end of it, the suitors antagonize Telemachus. So that's definitely a monster point. Even with like Telemachus, who is not as hardened by like the traumas of life like Odysseus, even with him, he has his own struggles that he's going through in Ithaca. When Athena rolls up in the song Little Wolf and helps out Telemachus, he didn't call out to her, he didn't ask, she just shows up. That's a huge humanity point. And the song that makes me cry every single time, Will Be Fine, that's another humanity point there. Athena tells her story, Telemachus says, hey, reach out to your friend, he probably needs you. Our 10th humanity point occurs in God Games. This is when Athena puts herself on the line. And even if she can't be killed, she doesn't have to fight for Odysseus, but she does. And even like brings herself to the point of begging Zeus to let Odysseus go. Not a very godly or monster thing to do, but it's very compassionate and selfless. Rolling into the Vengeance saga, our 16th point in freaking monster is gonna be dangerous. Hermes rolls up and tells Odysseus that he needs to be dangerous, gets him off the island and says, hey, if you want to make it home, abandon caution, use all of your cunning and your wits, and like be selfish, get home however you can. Then what's really cool in the song Get in the Water, we actually have 2 points. One is monster. This is obviously when Poseidon attacks and they have their really big showdown, but we also have a humanity point because one last time Odysseus implores Poseidon to try to find it in his heart to forgive. Our next monster point is going to be 600 Strike. It's when Odysseus traps Poseidon and essentially tortures him. Then what's really cool is in the Ithaca saga, we have a lot of back and forth. So the first one is actually a humanity point. We have the challenge. We finally get to hear from Penelope, and we hear that she's been waiting this whole time. She has stayed loyal to Odysseus. And then, of course, a monster point for Hold Them Down, just for like literally everything in that song. Then when Odysseus goes into Hulk mode, obviously in the song Odysseus, when he slays all the suitors, that's for sure a monster point. And then we have another point that's actually humanity in the song Odysseus. It's when Telemachus tries to convince the suitors to stop, trying to give a promise that they will be spared. And then we have a third point in Odysseus, that same song, but it's a monster point because when he says, hey, chill and I'll spare you, they're like, nah, actually we're gonna kill you. So at this point, we're at like 21 monster points and then only 13 humanity. I can't help but wonder, father-son reunion, that's a huge humanity point. He's finally, after how many years, 20 years, getting to see his son again and reunite with him. That reminds Odysseus of his fatherhood, everything he's missed. It sort of brings out like this sadness, but maybe hopefulness for the future in him. And Would You Fall in Love with Me Again? When Penelope forgives Odysseus, that's a huge humanity point as well. The really cool thing about Would You Fall in Love with Me Again, and Jorge's actually talked about it, is at this point, where are we looking at Odysseus? He's the full-on monster. He had to be that to get home. He had to be that to kill all those suitors. He couldn't just be a man. And when we get to the very last song, Odysseus is the final boss. So the hero of our story, even though it's a tragedy, is Penelope. That makes Penelope a romantic hero. So even though Odysseus should have a tragic end, Penelope basically acts as like this shield of unconditional love. And like redeems him of all of this. By the time we get to the end of the musical, we have suffered for sure. If we look at the data, we would feel kind of heartbroken, but the beautiful thing that happens in Would You Fall in Love with Me Again is when she forgives Odysseus and just showers him in unconditional love, she kind of acts like this eraser. Just every time Penelope reaffirms her love to him, it's like she's just wiping away all of the years of suffering, of guilt, of despair. We get to have this beautiful ending, even though all of the signs show that this should have been a tragically devastating story and musical. By the time we get to Penelope, she just takes care of all of that for us. She's the best. Why do we love Epic the musical? Because it's a story about man versus monster, but more than that, it's a story about redemption and unconditional love. And I think it resonates with so many people because we all want our own Penelope. We all want someone who's going to say to us that they're going to love us no matter what. And that is the beauty of the story. It's so wonderfully done. And I love it so much. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, then please leave a like. If you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe to my channel. And if you have a suggestion for another story you'd like for me to talk about, then leave it in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.